Hello and namaste to dear students and all my fellow viewers. You are welcome back to Taste Nepal. I am Bidur Neupane. Today I'm gonna present you a new lesson of compulsory English grade 11 new course, that is unit 1 of section 2 under literary studies. The first unit of this literary studies is short story called The Selfish Giant. In this video I'll deal with the summary, analysis, interpretation, themes, and question answers of this lesson. Therefore, please watch the video till the end to get the complete understanding of the story. Dear students, let me start today's lesson. Before I begin, I'd like to request you all to subscribe my channel for other many videos and updates. Please press the notification bell to get notified. Now, let's begin. The Selfish Giant by Oscar Wilde. It's a story from section 2 of grade 11 compulsory English. It is a short story. Before I begin, let me tell you what things will be discussed inside this video. We'll discuss about the author, plot, setting, characters, summary, analysis, themes, and at last question answers. I'll deal with the question answers also. I have written the answers of the questions that are given in your book. So let's begin with the introduction of the author. I have written here a brief introduction of the author, other things that are less important for this. Oscar Wilde was an Irish poet and a playwright of Victorian era. There were different era or ages of English literature, and he was the greatest poet of Victorian age or Victorian era. Now let's start with the plot कस्तो छ त भन्दा here exposition अथवा how does the story start. The giant finds kids playing in the garden. सुरुमा चाहिँ setting चाहिँ यो हुन्छ. त्यसपछि rising action चाहिँ the selfish giant bans the kids from playing in his garden. That is the rising action, right? And the climax is the kids come back to the garden. They come back to the garden, and falling action is the kids are really nice to the giant. He loves the kids, and the resolution at last is the giant is no longer selfish, right? And at last he dies there. So setting up this story, the selfish giant is set somewhere in a fairy tale world with castles, orcs and giants. The story mostly takes place in the giant's beautiful garden. It is cold, dark, and rainy in the garden, but warm, sunny in the garden after the kids play in it, right? Because when the kids they play there, there is the joy, or it's so bliss, right? Blissful thing there in the garden. So this is the setting of the story. Characters are children and giant. Protagonist, oh I'm sorry, it should be here, it should be protagonist is the little boy, right? And here it should be the giant, right? It should be the giant here. Okay, so giant and the protagonist, right? Antagonist and protagonist. Antagonist means the playing the negative role, and protagonist means the that playing the positive role, right? And summary, let's start with the summary, right? The story mostly takes place in the giant's beautiful garden. It's cold and dark in the garden, but when the children they play, it's so warm and sunny, right? The children were fond of playing in the giant's garden. They were playing there. It was lovely garden with soft grass and beautiful flowers. It had 12 peach trees that flourish with pink and purple flowers in the spring season, drawn into rich fruits and in the autumn. The children listened to the songs of various birds and thus live scarcity, right? So here the children used to play in the in this paragraph you got to know that the children used to play in the giant's garden. That was most beautiful, right? Where the children they used to entertain the song of the various kinds of birds. So next, their enjoyment had ended with the arrival of the giant. When that giant came there after 7 years, right? 7 वर्षपछि आफ्नो फ्रेन्डको घरबाट फर्केर आउँदा he was infuriated, means he was angry when he saw children playing in his garden. He started shouting and built a high wall around it, right? बच्चाहरूलाई तिमीहरू यहाँ नखेल, मेरो गार्डनमा किन आयो भनेर कराएर उसले चाहिँ एउटा अग्लो वाल बनाएको हुन्छ. He put a noticed that trespassing from his property is prohibited भनेको अनाधिकृत प्रवेश निषेध गरिएको भनेर चाहिँ trespassers are prosecuted right shall be prosecuted भनेर चाहिँ उसले लेखेको अथवा prohibited भनेर लेखेको चाहिँ एउटा नोटिस राखेको हुन्छ जसले गर्दा चाहिँ children were forbidden to play in his garden right त्यसपछि चिल्ड्रेनहरु त्यहाँ आउन खेल्न आउन छाडे the decision took a toll on children as they did not have a place to play because if they play on the road there was a lot of dust and stones रोडमा खेल्न चाहिँ डस्ट धुलो र ढुङ्गाहरू भएको कारणले गर्दा दे वर भेरी स्याड एन्ड डिप्रेस्ड खेल्ने ठाउँ नपाएपछि उनीहरू एकदमै दुखी र चिन्तित भएका थिए As the time passed by spring season came and flowers blossomed everywhere and little birds were chirping all around right season change हुँदै गयो त्यसमा स्प्रिङमा चाहिँ के भयो flowers blossomed and the birds were chirping but they were making sound but it did not arrive in giant's garden अन्त सबै अरु गार्डनहरुमा अन्त सबै वरिपरि चाहिँ सिजन चेन्ज भएर रुखले पनि पालुवा फेरिसकेर राइट चराहरुको चाहिँ एकखालको सङ पनि चारैतिर चराहरु आएर बस्ने चराहरु कराउने हुन थाले बट जायन्टको गार्डनमा चाहिँ देयर वाज नथिङ देयर वेयर barren winters only right त्यहाँ चाहिँ विन्टर मात्र थियो किन भन्दा the children were not there right and the birds also did not come when the children did not go there in the garden did not when they were not allowed to play in the garden त्यसपछि के भयो trees and flowers were not blossoming right अब tree र flower ले पनि blossom गरेन no birds were chirping however the snow and the frost were happy the snow covered up the grass with her white cloak and the त्यसपछि cloak that sorry frost also cover the meadow or the garden there right so that it is just a story right it is just a story and story मा के हुन्छ फ्लावर ट्री ले चाहिँ ब्लूजम गर्दैन फ्लावर ले ब्लूजम गर्दैन त भन्दैन रियालिटी मा राइट बट इन स्टोरी it is just fairy tale or story right so here it shows that the nature also was in favor of the children right so the giant's garden was not blossomed or that was not beautiful anymore right so the north wind was invited to stay by them right तिनीहरुले चाहिँ north wind लाई बोलाए that wind was so cold they brought chaos in the garden means confusions right and then they planned to invite hail means that asina bhन्छ he fell on the roof of the castle and broke most of its spades he was dressed in gray right त्यसपछि त्यो असिनाले चाहिँ उसको घरको माथिको रुफ पनि भत्काउन थाल्यो however the giant was waiting eagerly and was hopeful तर जायन्ट चाहिँ एक दिन विन्टर सकिन्छ र स्प्रिङ सुरु हुन्छ भनेर खुलेर बसिरहेको हुन्छ one morning the giant heard the melodious song of a bird right melodious song चाहिँ सुन्यो उसले बर्डको initially the giant thought it must be the king's musician passing by किङको म्युजिशियन होला भन्ने लाग्यो उसलाई सुरुमा right but त्यो थिएन then giant rejoiced as he was sure that the spring has arrived he looked out and found that children were back पछि चाहिँ स्प्रिङ आइसकेपछि चिल्ड्रेन ब्याक भएको उसले थाहा भयो every tree was blossoming as a child was sitting on its branch उसले चाहिँ सबै रुखमा चाहिँ फूल फुलेको अथवा ब्लुजम त्यो पाउला पलाएको र चाहिँ एउटा चाइल्ड चाहिँ रुखको ब्रान्चमा बसेर खेलिरहेको देख्यो उसले राइट the birds were flying flowers were laughing except for a place where a small child could not climb the tree सबैतिर चाहिँ फ्लावर were laughing they were blossoming right but एक ठाउँमा चाहिँ एउटा चाइल्ड चाहिँ क्लाइम्ब अप रुखमा चढ्न नसकेर चाहिँ बसिरहेको थियो त्यहाँ चाहिँ ब्लुजम भएको थिएन the poor tree wanted the child at frost right as frost snow and north wind were blowing on that right चाहिँ ट्रीबाट चाहिँ स्नो अथवा त्यो चाहिँ फ्रस्टहरु चाहिँ जाँदै थियो र ट्रीले चाहिँ त्यो बच्चालाई बोलाइरहेको थियो अथवा त्यो चाइल्ड चाहिँ त्यो ट्रीमा जान खोजिरहेको थियो द जायन्ट रियलाइज हिज मिस्टेक एन्ड डिसाइडेड टु ब्रेक द वाल त्यसपछि जायन्टले चाहिँ के गर्यो ओहो मैले चाहिँ गल्ती गरेछु चिल्ड्रेनहरुलाई चाहिँ यहाँ खेल्न नदिएर त्यसले गर्दा चाहिँ यहाँ चाहिँ गार्डन पनि राम्रो थिएन अब अहिले चिल्ड्रेनहरु आएर खेल्न थाले त्यसले गर्दा चाहिँ so it's now again beautiful so this is not the good thing to build the wall and to restrict the children to come inside and play, right? So he thought that, and he realized his mistakes. After realizing the mistake, he decided to break the wall. He went downstairs and opened the front door, but the children were frightened. To see him, the small boy could not run away. The giant lifted the boy and put him onto the branch of the tree. The tree blossomed at once, right? त्यसपछि ट्रीले चाहिँ त्यो जायन्टले चाहिँ त्यो बोयलाई लिफ्ट गर्यो ट्रीमा, राइट? आफै माथि लगेर चढाइदियो, जो माथि क्लाइम्ब अप गर्न सकेको थिएन. द जायन्ट्स बिहेभियर वाज चेन्ज्ड एन्ड ही अलाउड द अदर चिल्ड्रेन. देन द इन्टर द स्प्रिङ. जुबिलेन्ट जायन्ट टुक एन एक्स एन्ड नक डाउन द वाल. त्यसपछि उसले सबै वाल भत्कायो. पिपल वर सरप्राइज टु सी द चिल्ड्रेन प्लेइङ विथ द जायन्ट, राइट? त्यसपछि जायन्ट र चिल्ड्रेनले चाहिँ एकदमै उसको गार्डनमा चाहिँ सँगै रमाएर खेलेर आउँछन्. द जायन्ट इन्भाइटेड एभ्री चाइल्ड टु भिजिट हिज ग्राउन्ड विथ स्पेसल मेन्सन टु द यङ्गेस्ट चाइल्ड. सबै यङ चाइल्डहरूलाई आउन खेल्नको लागि भनेर आउँछ. त्यसपछि अब चाहिँ ही ग्रिउ वर्ल्ड, राइट? ही वाज द चिल्ड्रेन प्लेइङ वाइल सिटिङ इन एन आर्म चेयर एज ही वाज ओल्ड. आर्म चेयरमा बसेर उसले बच्चाहरू खेलेर आउँछ. ही सेड द्याट द चिल्ड्रेन आर द मोस्ट ब्युटिफुल फ्लावर्स अफ अल, राइट? सबैभन्दा ब्युटिफुल चाहिँ चिल्ड्रेन देखेर आउँछ उसले त्यहाँ गार्डनमा. द जायन्ट नो लङ्गर हेटेड द विन्टर्स. वान विन्टर मर्निङ ही वाज सरप्राइज टु सी द लभली वाइट ब्लोजम्स. इट्स ब्रान्चेस वेयर गोल्डन बियरिङ सिल्भर फ्रुट, राइट? अब नेक्स्ट टाइम चाहिँ विन्टरमा पनि उसको गार्डनमा चाहिँ फ्लावर्सहरू ब्लोजम गरिरहेको थियो, जसरी पहिला गरिरहेको थिएन त्यहाँ. ही वाज भेरी ह्याप्पी एन्ड रस टुवार्ड्स हिम. सो त्यसपछि चाहिँ के हुन्छ, एन्ड द लिटिल बोय सिटिङ, उसले चाहिँ एउटा बच्चालाई त्यहाँ चाहिँ बसिरहेको देखेर आउँछ, राइट? ही वाज भेरी ह्याप्पी एन्ड रस टुवार्ड्स हिम. अन सिइङ हिज ह्यान्ड्स ही ग्रिउ एङ्ग्री. ही वान्टेड टु पनिस द रङ डुवर्स, राइट? तिम्रो यो ह्यान्डमा कसले यस्तो गर्यो भनेर चाहिँ सोधेर आउँछ. उसको हातमा चाहिँ वुन्ड, चोट जस्तो देखेर आउँछ. बट द चाइल्ड रिप्लाइड द्याट दोज वेयर वुन्ड्स अफ लभ, राइट? सो त्यहाँ चाहिँ समाउ ओल्ड इङ्ग्लिस युज भएको हुन्छ. तपाईँले टेक्स्टमा हेर्नुभयो भने द जायन्ट वाज सक टु हियर सच एन आन्सर, राइट? सो वुन्डको लभ, वुन्ड्स अफ लभ, राइट? त्यो चाहिँ मायाको घाउ भनेर आउँछ उसले. देन ही asked about him, who replied gently that once he allowed him to play in the garden, now he would take him along. When the children came to play in the afternoon, they found the giant lying dead, covered with the white blossoms, right? At last the giant was dead there. The children, they found him lying dead, covered with white blossoms. The flower like blossoms ले, right? चाहिँ उसलाई कभर गरेको पोजिसनमा भेट्यो. In this way we can conclude the summary. Now interpretation. In this story, Christian allegory, the giant garden is analogous to the biblical garden of Eden, right? The idyllic paradise where human first came into being, right? The creation myth in the book of Genesis describe, हामीले चाहिँ एडम र इभाको स्टोरी पढेको थियौँ, त्यो योसँग पनि रिलेट गर्न सकिन्छ, जहाँ चाहिँ एडम र इभालाई चाहिँ गार्डनमा चाहिँ आउन दिएको थियो. बट त्यहाँ चाहिँ त्यहाँको एप्पल टिपेर नखानु भनेर दे वर फरबिडन टु इट एप्पल्स फ्रम द एप्पल्स ट्री, जहाँ एप्पल ट्री थियो. र त्यसले गर्दा चाहिँ उनीहरूले एप्पल खाएको, राइट? त्यहाँको एप्पल टिपेर खाएको, र त्यसले गर्दा चाहिँ सर्पेन्टले उसलाई चाहिँ एडम र इभालाई चाहिँ एउटा कर्स, श्राप दिएर उनीहरू चाहिँले चाहिँ अरू बच्चा जन्माउने र तिमीहरूले चाहिँ यो वर्ल्डमा चाहिँ सिन, पाप स्वरूप, राइट? अरू चाहिँ जेनेसिस अथवा अरू जेनेरेसनको रिप्रोडक्सन गर्नुपर्ने भन्ने कुराहरू त्यसपछि चाहिँ यो सुरु भएको भनिन्छ. जस्ट लाइक द्याट यो कुरालाई चाहिँ प्यारलली चाइल्डहुड र के भन्छ त्यसलाई फरबिडन, राइट? सो त्योसँग हेर्दाखेरि यसरी पनि हेर्न सकिन्छ. द इनोसेन्ट चिल्ड्रेन इन द गार्डन, in a garden setting from which they are about to be expelled, right? They were expelled from the garden, right? This moment establishes the giant's selfishness as his defining characteristics, as well as the source of the story's conflict. The wall he raises is a symbol of the emotional barrier he maintains between himself and the children. Wall चाहिँ त्यसलाई चाहिँ के भन्छ, that is emotional barrier, right? Not only the physical barrier, त्यसले चाहिँ emotional barrier भनिन्छ, which prevents him from forming any kind of relationship with them, right? The sign, meanwhile, speaks how unreasonable his selfishness is. Only a truly cynical person, a bad person, would take legal action against children, right? Children को against मा चाहिँ एक्सन लिने चाहिँ राइट त्यहाँ के भनेछ ट्रेसपासर्स shall be prosecuted भनेको कसैले अनाधिकृत नसोधिकन भित्र आउँछ भने त्यसलाई चाहिँ मुद्दा चलाइनेछ भनेको हुन्छ so in that way you can analyze these things from this story. So the harsh, long-winded winter weather is the consequence of giant selfishness. Selfishness को कारणले गर्दा चाहिँ लामो समयसम्म विन्टर आइरह्यो राइट त्यसरी पनि हेर्न सकिन्छ एउटा सेल्फिसनेसको कारणले गर्दा बाई रिजेक्टिङ द चिल्ड्रेन द जायन्ट हेज अननोइङली रिजेक्टेड द अदर गुड चाहिँ चिल्ड्रेनहरूको चाहिँ विसलाई रिजेक्ट गर्नु भनेको चाहिँ उसले चाहिँ गुड थिङ अथवा गुड डुइङ्सहरूलाई चाहिँ अथवा गुड डिड्सहरूलाई चाहिँ रिजेक्ट गर्नु हो भन्ने छ राइट. We can relate in that way. Just as the giant selfishness drives out warmth and cheer, it attracts only cold, inhospitable weather, right? Selfishness लाई चाहिँ selfishness लाई केले drive उसको selfishness को कारणले गर्दा के drive भयो त्यहाँ? That is cold, inhospitable weather, bad weather. The implicit comparison between the cold-hearted giant and the wintry weather around him is straightforward enough, right? So they are the parallel things there, right? That is cold-hearted giant and the bad weather, right? They are the same thing there. And in this section also suggests a system of cosmic justice at work, punishing the giant in a way that feeds his sin, right? At last, the nature punishes him, right? That was his death, right? So themes are humility. The children were humiliated by when they were playing there, right? Salvation means what you call rejoice, excitement, compassion, right? Kindness also. Kindness, somewhere he was showing his kindness at last. Self-importance, giving the self-importance. The giant was giving self-importance. Loneliness, right? The giant was alone because he was having the long winter there and he was alone in his garden. Love, at last he loved the children, and even he was asking one children what had happened on his hand, right, while it was wounded. And pain, suffering, these are the themes of the story, right? And symbols used, spring season is the symbol of joy and happiness. टेक्स्टमा चाहिँ स्प्रिङ सिजनलाई चाहिँ जोय र ह्याप्पिनेसको रूपमा हेरिएको छ. विन्टर सिजन भनेको चाहिँ सिम्बल अफ पेन एन्ड सफरिङ, जुन सिजन चाहिँ that was there in Giant's garden, right? Now answer the following questions. के question दिएको छ भन्दा there are 5 questions given in your text, right? Where did the children used to play? What did the snow and frost do to the garden? So these questions, the answer of these questions, I have written these things one by one here. Let's go through these things, okay? Where did the children used to play? The children used to play in the giant's garden. Where did the snow and the frost, what did the snow and the frost do to the garden? The snow covered up the grass with her great white cloak, and the frost painted all the trees silver, right? So these are the answers of A and B. Now let's go to C. What did the giant hear when he was lying awake in the bed? The giant heard some lovely music when he was lying awake in the bed, right? So this is the answer of number C. Why do you think spring season never came to the giant's garden? किन spring season आएन? लामो समयसम्म winter मात्र चलिरह्यो भन्दा I think spring season in the story is the symbol of happiness and joy, and it never came to the giant's garden. किन आएन भन्दा because he was selfish and unkind to the children. त्यो भएको कारणले गर्दा चाहिँ spring season आएन. There was only the winter season for a long time, right? And next thing, how did the giant realize his mistake? उसले आफ्नो गल्ती कसरी realize गर्यो भन्दा the giant put the little boy on the top of the tree and then knocked down the wall built, right, by that was built by him, thinking that many children would play in the garden forever, right? In this way the giant realized his mistake. उसले कसरी रियलाइज गर्यो भन्दा मैले यो वाल जुन बनाइरहेको छु यो चाहिँ साँच्चै नराम्रो रहेछ, यसले गर्दा चिल्ड्रेनहरूलाई रेस्ट्रिक्ट गर्यो यहाँ आउनको लागि, खेल्नको लागि चिल्ड्रेनहरूलाई रेस्ट्रिक्ट गरेको कारणले गर्दा मेरो गार्डनमा विन्टर सिजन नै लामो समयसम्म भइरह्यो. त्यसले गर्दा he was suffering there, right? So he realized his mistake in this way and he broke down the wall. So this much for today's lesson about the selfie giant. If you have any queries about today's lesson, please feel free to write a comment in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching the video. Have a good time. I'll see you in the next video.